The SBC and the Kel factor. Hey all, this is the Theosaurus Rex, and today I want to talk to you about Garrett Kell's statement to the Southern Baptist Convention and use it as an illustration to some problematic things on the left. But first, a quick note. I graduated from New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary and officially am a Southern Baptist based on membership to a Southern Baptist church. I don't consider myself one necessarily, and I have been part of practically every Protestant denomination, my favorite being Quakers, minus Presbyterians and some more liturgical ones like Episcopalians, etc. Earlier in the week, the Southern Baptists had their annual convention, and they did a whole bunch of things, and you can read about them elsewhere if you find it particularly interesting. Not as much. One of the things, though, on the docket was a speech by Vice President Mike Pence, who had been scheduled to speak and prior to the convention starting. But some more progressive, shall we say, messengers, that's SBC speak for someone representing a church, didn't like the idea of Pence showing up. And this one particular gentleman, his response was featured in the Washington Post, a bunch of, mainstream news agencies, which all cited this, and he posted on his public Twitter. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the whole thing, including the name and his where he pastors for the sake of context. And the quote I'll be reading will also be on the screen. Kell writes, you can see where he's from, but he said, "I want to make a motion that we amend the agenda to replace Mike Pence's address on Wednesday with a time of prayer. To be clear, this has nothing to do with Mike Pence personally. From my understanding, he is a Christian man who attends the church of one of our pastors. We must pray God aids him in his important service to our nation. But as a pastor of a church that strives to grow in unity, gospel faithfulness, and missions efforts, I have 3 brief concerns regarding the way this decision affects our local church and gospel partners." That's the first part. On the outset, what bothers me most about Kell's comments is that he specifically is targeting Vice President Pence. Instead of pushing for replacement of all political officials, he didn't complain about the governor of Texas, who admittedly had already spoken prior to Kell getting up there. But the point is there nonetheless. He targeted Vice President Pence, where he simply could have argued that people holding political offices not be allowed to speak in the future, and cited the Texas governor as an example. To his first point, quote, "Unity in the church. For many years, I have been talking about loving and listening to our minority brothers and sisters. This invitation does not suggest that we're actually listening. Not only are many of us in this room hurt and bothered by this invitation, but also many of our minority brothers and sisters will be especially hurt by this invitation, and I fear that it would communicate that our political associations are more important than our association with them." End quote. Okay, this, by far, I don't know why he led off with this one. This is the most ridiculous out of all of them. In what way did the invitation of the vice president hurt people? How? And why are minority brothers and sisters especially hurt by the invitation of the vice president? How little does Kell think of his brothers and sisters by arguing that they're so weak, so unable to deal with the presence of a white person, that they'll be hurt by it? Now, he didn't come right out and say that, but it can easily be inferred that they're special and they're in need of special treatment because having somebody speak at a conference that they disagree with or that's part of an administration they don't like, it hurts them in a special way. Furthermore, let us assume that by inviting the vice president to communicate that our political communicate that our political associations are more important than our association with them, end quote, it is a ridiculously slippery slope to go down. Well, the Bible doesn't speak very well of the LGBTQI plus lifestyle, so we better not read it lest people believe that our adherence to the Bible is more important than their souls and our ability to lead them to Christ. Yes, that's an absurd argument, but it uses the same basic logic. I'm not saying that a political candidate speaking is the same as adherence to the Bible, so much as I'm arguing against the idea of changing what we do, living in fear that our actions will alienate people, because ultimately, people will always be alienated by something. This just rubs me as the soft bigotry of low expectations. We assume the worst of people. Doing that is bigoted. His second point, clarity of the gospel. What binds this convention together is the gospel of Jesus Christ. Because of that, this convention ought to be marked by things we share in common, not things about which faithful Christians can disagree. By associating publicly with any administration, we send a mixed message to our members suggesting that our faithful that to be faithful to the gospel is to also align with that administration. We must do all we can to preserve the purity of the gospel, and this invitation works against it. Okay, so this one had more merit, as he argued that associating with any administration can be giving mixed signals. I can logically understand his point. I disagree with it, but I see where he's coming from. Now, this isn't something that's only new to the SBC. Inviting political individuals is a kind of a staple of conferences. Hillary Clinton was invited to speak at the National Baptist Convention, and Barack Obama was invited to speak and spoke at multiple conventions. No Southern Baptist ones, full disclosure. But I don't think this really muddies up the gospel, because our gospel is inherently political, and having people who are political speak at things can help us understand things. It'd be kind of like the idea of having a missionary who is, let's say, from Russia, come and talk to us about what is it like in Russia and that kind of thing. Now, I listened to Mike Pence's speech, and I thought a little bit of it was kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Campaigny. I could have gone without that part. But overall, I think the speech itself was fine. So anyway, I disagree with this point, but I think this one had merit, and I can see where someone might agree with this. Point 3, the safety of workers. Whether rightly or wrongly, the current administration provokes strong reactions, and in some cases, great hostility in many regions of the world. By publicly aligning our workers with this or any administration, we are putting our workers at risk of being recipients of anger against the administration. What is said in Washington echoes around the world, and having him come further endangers our workers unnecessarily. End quote. Now, this one I don't agree with either, but I believe has less merit than the previous one. Southern Baptist Convention missionaries and workers will face persecution and danger irregardless of who's in the White House. And I'm not convinced that Trump's words or policy will add to that danger. And he's also assuming that an invitation for a politician to speak is the same as aligning. Our Christianity is what endangers the workers, not who's in the White House. And people who may do that are just using it as an excuse. He concludes by saying, In conclusion, I would encourage us to consider Romans 14:19, quote, "So then let us pursue what makes for peace and for mutual upbuilding," end quote, which in this case would be to reconsider our invitation. Brothers and sisters, there is a world full of people on their way to hell, and we must not get distracted with issues like this. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus and cast off everything that slows us down. I agree. Let's not get distracted by who speaks at a conference and who doesn't. Let's focus on the gospel and let our actions and love speak to them. Let's not assume people are at the lowest standard. Let's treat them at the highest standard, not assuming that because of their skin color they have ex-political beliefs, or because we have someone talk that they will react violently. The soft bigotry of low expectations is just that, bigotry, and has no place in the Southern Baptist Convention. Thank you guys very much for listening and checking me out. Feel free to interact with me. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, or you can contact me on Twitter at ST Saint Theosaurus Rex, and we'll go from there. Y'all have a great day. Goodbye.